Harmonics, and welcome to today's episode of The Profitable Farmer. And today, I want to kind of walk you through how to really take charge of your farming operation. Because we talked to, I mean, literally, I've talked to at this point, I don't know, 4,000 farmers around the world, and you know, when you talk to that many farmers, it's almost like you're getting university education, but from a practical standpoint. I mean, yes, you can go to university, you can learn a lot of really good, really scientific information about plants, about how they work, and about how to farm and how to engage in the various processes of farming. But the other way is just to take a more practical approach, and that's I think where a lot of farmers have sort of gotten their information. They just practically they'll try something, they'll do something. A farmer recommends something, a different practice or different way of doing things, and they'll adopt these things and they try stuff, and some things work and some things don't. And of course, by talking to this many farmers, I've kind of figured out what in a lot of ways works and what doesn't. Now, people ask me what the difference between a really profitable farmer and who's making a lot of money on this farm versus a farmer who's struggling. And they ask me what that difference is. And yes, to a certain degree, the type of crop you're growing can be very important. You know, if you're growing a commodity crop like hay or wheat or corn, you're not going to make as much money on a per acre basis as the guys who are growing strawberries and plums and apricots and apples and those types of things. Those crops are just worth more money in the marketplace. But the idea is most corn farmers and wheat farmers and those guys, they have broad acreage, and they also don't have to spend nearly as much money for labor, in terms of fertilizers, in terms of inputs that the specialty crop growers have. So the specialty crop growers are investing a lot more money in their crops and their input side, but they're getting a much better return on the output side. The broad acre guys, wheat, corn, soy, those guys, their investment is lower in terms of on a per acre basis, but they're also making, they're making less money on their acreage. So um, without having you change the crops that you're growing, which is not something I necessarily recommend, I want to just share one of the big differences that I see with innovative farmers of any type of crop. So, because even within, let's say if you're growing corn, right? Even within corn farmers, there's innovative corn guys, and then there's uh, corn guys that are minimalists, is what I like to say. I don't like to cast aspersions on anybody or make anybody feel like they're not adequate or something like that. But there's the innovative farmers who are really taking control of their farm, and there's guys that are just sort of going with the flow and doing less. The biggest difference is how you're measuring your inputs and how you're measuring your outputs. How detailed is your measurement process? Because if you are the type of guy that just throws fertilizer on the field once and then lets Mother Nature do its work and hopes for a good year, then you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years, you're going to have in between years, etc. Right? And of course, the type of fertilizer and your irrigation schedule, etc., is going to help with that. But if you're the type of farmer that really kind of gets into the nooks and crannies and says, okay, if I spread my seed this far, if I spread my seed this far apart, if I add this much fertilizer, this much liquid fertilizer, this much irrigation, if I irrigate at these specific times, if I spray my fungicide right at this particular time, if I really take the time to manage my acreage, then I'll get a better result. And those guys do typically get way better results. In fact, I've talked to some guys here that are going to be using our product this year who already were getting 300 and 320 bushel an acre corn. And I've heard other guys say that's impossible in the same region. I said, hey, that's what they're telling me, and this is, of course, without our technology. So we expect them to get an extra 20 to 30% on top of that, even, just because we're increasing the energy level of the corn and the plant. So, by the way, as I go through this, guys, feel free to ask questions. I would like this to be interactive. I'd like you guys to ask questions. So, but I want to answer your questions as we get here. So please feel free to ask questions. Now, I've been talking a lot with farmers in Africa, in various regions of Africa recently. And, again, in Africa, there's a stark difference between the large farms who are really doing everything really innovative and really measuring everything, to the other guys who are just sort of like literally like just plant something and hope it grows. I mean, kind of a thing. I mean, it's literally that level. And what we're suggesting is, look, if you can take more control over your inputs and take more control over your operation and really start to measure things, measure your soil test once a year. Don't wait every 3 or 4 years. Take a look at the CEC. Take a look at how you can improve the organic matter of your soil. Take a look at how you can improve water retention in your soil, especially if you're a dryland farmer. You need to be really paying close attention to how much water retention your farm has. Take a look at rotating your crops around and what your rotation schedule looks like. I talk to a lot of regenerative farmers who, when they plant a variety of different crops as a cover crop during the off season, they end up with soil that's a lot richer and has a lot more organic matter than similar farms in the same region who are growing the same crops, but they're just not growing that. So you ask yourself, well, why would I bother putting a cover crop out there that's not going to earn me any money? Well, the reality is it's going to cost you a lot more money in fertilizer the next year if you're not doing that. And of course, now with the cost of fertilizer going through the roof, a lot of those farmers that weren't paying attention, that weren't growing regeneratively, are hurting real bad right now. And of course, we want to help everybody. Um, so just the more you can actually measure and take control of your farm, the better off you are. In fact, if you look at the background, right there with the background here, you see these little maps here, and you may not be able to see the detail here, but we really actually mapped out in a specific farm when we do our trials, because we already know our technology works. For example, the crop booster always produces a good result, but the farmer really wants to be able to have that understanding of what our system is doing and how much it's helping. So we actually lay it down in detail. We don't just say, here, throw this on half your farm and use the other farm as your control, and we'll see the difference. We did that at first. We made that mistake, but the reality was we weren't getting the data we needed. We weren't proving that the fact that the benefits that we were having on the Kyminasi farms was actually benefiting the farmer. I mean, we know we were getting 20, 30, 40% increases in yield, but the farmer didn't know. In fact, I just talked to a farmer the other day where I showed him based upon the yield maps and everything that he gave me, that he got an 18% increase in yield on the treated farm. And he thought he didn't get any difference. He thought, well, I didn't see any difference here. But he got an 18% increase in yield. When you look at that, it's like, wow, imagine not knowing that you got 18% more yield. Um, I mean, I guess it must be nice if you're doing well enough that you don't pay attention to that, but that's really important though. I mean, imagine because when we talk to people, it's funny when I talk to people and I'm talking to a prospect who's looking to buy my product, and I tell them 18, 20, 30% increases in yield, they look at me like I'm crazy, like that's so far beyond what they could possibly imagine getting. And yet when I give them that result, they don't see it. They don't even see that result. And so it's pretty amazing that you have those differentials. So um, the first thing I can just say is just measure your soil test. And don't just look at, okay, how much nitrogen is there, how much phosphorus, how much potassium, how much calcium. Really take a good look at that. Like, what is your CEC of your soil? How is that changing year over year? Your CEC is your cation ion exchange capacity, and that's actually how many negative ions, how many positive ions which are able to capture those negative ions. They keep that nitrogen you're putting in the soil in the root zone for longer periods, so the plant has a chance to absorb this before it evaporates out into the atmosphere. So what is your CEC? That's a good measurement of soil health. If you've ever looked at microbial activity in the soil, do a soil test that includes microbial activity. And you might be amazed at how much an improvement you can see just by increasing the microbial activity in the soil. One of the things that we've seen in our test is when we can increase the microbial activity of the soil, it's dramatically increasing the productivity of that soil. And that's going to help for a long-term sustainable solution. At Harvest Harmonics, we're all about how do we make sustainable solutions? How do we give the farmer some help, but not just for this year, but increasing their soil health over years? Other tests that you guys can do is samples. Take some tissue samples. Get yourself a chlorophyll, a SPAD meter, a chlorophyll meter, and actually measure the photosynthesis activity of the plants. And at different times of the day, at different times of the year, just see what those differences are, and actually take a look at, well, where am I producing? Where am I gaining on yield, and where am I losing on yield? Where am I? Is my plants getting hurt by too much water? Where are they getting hurt by not enough water? Where are they getting hurt by heat waves or droughts, or where are they getting hit by too much rain? All these different factors were going to dramatically reduce your plant's efficiency, and you're going to reduce the amount of yield you're going to get in terms of your bushels per acre. And yet, if you can really measure those different details and do so in an efficient way, then you can actually make your farm more efficient. So the way that I tell farmers the best way, the most sustainable way that they can get a better yield is not just by just throwing and dumping a bunch more nitrogen on the field. It's making the plants as efficient as possible, utilizing the nutrients and water you have and the weather that you have in order to maximize the overall yield for those conditions. Now, Kyminasi Plant Booster does this on virtually every farm. And the reason we do it is because we're not focusing on adding chemicals or adding nutrients to the soil or anything like that. What we focus on is how do we make the plants more efficient? How do we make the metabolism or the energy production of that plant more efficient so that it continues to operate at a high energy level and reduces the need for further fertilizers and water and other things? And with the Kyminasi system, with the crop booster system that we have, that's exactly what we're doing. We're improving microbial activity. We're improving the metabolism of the plant by realigning all those different metabolic processes in the plants and keeping its energy production at a super high level. And when you can do that consistently, you're going to see positive results, not just on one crop or one season, but year over year over year and multiple crops. Our multiple crops growers, our vegetable growers that are growing multiple different types of crops are saying, man, I'm getting great yields this year. Every year I get better and better yields. Every year my soil health is even better. Every year I can find that I can cut costs here or cut costs there, or maybe I can plant closer together, or in some cases, like with vines and stuff, they can plant farther apart and use less seed. I mean, there's a number of different benefits, but you're never going to know what a new technology like the Kyminasi Plant Booster is going to do unless you measure. And so when you call us and when you talk to us, when you ask for a quote, yes, of course we can just give you a quote. I can give you a price. That's not the point though. The point is, how are we going to measure this? How are we going to measure what the crop booster system that we have is going to do for your farm so that you know and you're confident that you made the right decision and that this system is really the best thing that you can possibly do for your farm. So if you'd like to become a more innovative farmer, if you'd like to take the next step toward being, away from being, a laggard or one of the guys that kind of is a late adopter and late to the party, and you want to kind of move yourself more into the innovative stage and be more in control of your own destiny and in more in control of what you can do on your farm, then give us a call because the Kyminasi Plant Booster is simply the most advanced technology. It's increasing the metabolism of plants and making them more efficient. And the more efficient your plants simply just means you're going to get the most amount of yield you can get at the least amount of cost. And of course, that's the name of the game. When you really analyze what's going to make you more money and make you put more money in your pocket, it's just that. It's not just yield and it's not just reducing input costs. You have to do both simultaneously. And the only way that you can do that is by making plants more efficient and increasing their ability to utilize those resources efficiently. That's exactly what our system does. So if you're tired of spending a ton of money on inputs and you're tired of seeing your inputs not producing the kinds of yield and quality that you're looking for, then give us a call and let's work together to make your farm part of the future of farming today. Not tomorrow, not next month, not next year, not in a few years. Let's make your farm the future of farming today. Because every single farm that takes me up on my offer is going to make a lot more money, and they're going to tell all their friends, and then all their friends and all of your neighbors and friends are going to produce better quality food, which is, of course, going to make everybody happy because we all want healthy food, right? So let's work together and get people eating healthy food and let you guys produce healthier food while making more money. It is possible, and that's exactly what we're here for. So give us a call today, 727-324-6750. Let's work to help make you part of the future of farming today. I look forward to talking to you soon, guys. Have a great day.